Oh,
All right, we're
so
back.
okay,
We're
great.
back. Yeah, let me do a little introduction here. This is Michael Sky. I'm here with Hans Komain, who it looks like is taking a bathroom break, and Frederick Marks. We're just having a conversation in the lead up to our next interview, who is Simon Smart of Warrior Protocol. So, yeah, we're going to be talking to Simon, but we are just having a friendly conversation about the state of men and boys in our world. This live stream is part of a worldwide summit here online. Over at our website, you can watch 50 in depth interviews this week. And here on our Facebook page, facebook.com/calling all men summit. We're going to broadcast about 20 interviews. We just talked to Frederick Marks. Um, a man who really cares about men. And I definitely recommend going back and having a listen to that conversation if you missed it. All right. So we've got about 30 minutes before Simon joins us. And just before we jumped on the live stream here, Frederick, you were saying something about brotherhood.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have a number of thoughts around just the use of the term and the meaning of it. And let me start by saying this. In France, when they promote the Mankind Project training weekend, the New Warrior Training Adventure, basically all they put out to the citizenry in public is, men, do you long to belong to a brotherhood? That's it.
Wow, interesting.
And it's so interesting because in the US, we go through all of this mind fuck around how do we talk about what we do and how do we promote it. In France, it's all about, do you want to belong to a brotherhood? And they sell out those weekends within 2 hours.
Wow.
So I was reflecting on this issue because you guys were using the word brother and talking about brotherhood earlier. Two things. One, I had therapy for a couple years in my early to mid 30s. And I realized after a period of time that I felt very safe and comfortable in sharing my heart and sharing my emotions with my therapist, but not much necessarily with anyone else. Right? Fear. And so the weekend training that I did with the Mankind Project was that breakthrough for me of, for the first time, sharing my heart and all of my feelings with men. And just like that phenomenon, so subsequent to the weekend, I started using the word my brother for the first time in my life to anyone other than my literal brother. And it felt so good. It felt so good to be able to recognize the men in the Mankind Project as brothers. And after a period of years, I asked myself, well, why am I only referring to them as brothers? There are all these other men in the world who haven't done this training. And frankly, ultimately, I don't give a shit if they don't do it. They too are my brothers and need to be recognized as such. So in the last, maybe, 10, 15 years, I've challenged myself to call men who sometimes I'm meeting for the very first time brother. And that's important to me because I really do care deeply enough about our human family that I want to be able to refer to men who are total strangers as my brother.
You know, I'm a little bit divided on the topic. I say that because the word brother really means something to me. And there are a lot of people who will not show up as a brother. They'll call you brother, you know, they'll call you brother. I mean, I have a commitment to showing up as an ally to all of humanity. That means something in particular to me, like a brother, like a loving, strong, responsible, you know, older brother.
Annoying.
Annoying. Yes. Brother also means teasing and yes.
I was an annoying older brother. Probably
Hans,
still am.
sadly, Hans never had an older brother, so he, you know, I think I was one of his first ones. So
100%.
I'm a bit divided, you know, because yeah, I mean, here in Africa, if you're an older man, they'll just call you uncle, even if they're not related. If they're meeting for the first time, a boy on the street, an older man who's not his dad, he'll say uncle, or he'll, you know, or maybe grandfather, you know. So they use these family terms a lot more liberally, and it does create a certain kind of intimacy and connection and warmth, really. And it's really beautiful. It's I love it. But I've had someone use that word with me before and make a bunch of promises to me and tell me that he cared and things like this. And then when the shit hit the fan and it came time to show up like a brother, he was not there at all, could not be counted on. And I think this is, you know, Frederick, in our last interview, our last live, you were talking about how you spent the first maybe 40 years of your life with a bit of a distrust of men, maybe in a I don't know, in kind of in the world of women, let's say. And I don't know if that was the case with this guy, but it was like his word ultimately did not matter. And I think there's a difference here between the way that a lot of men, I don't know, if we talk about like what is.
Was he an initiated man?
That's a good question. He sure didn't act like one.
He probably was.
But he was an older one. So I had this expectation, you know, and I gave this trust. I kind of just, you know, lent him this trust and respect as an older man. And then he just did not show up the way I would expect an elder to show up. And I think there's a lot of older men out there like that. And I think part of the tragedy is there's a lot of younger men now that they don't want to grow up and take on responsibility because they don't want to become one of those guys.
They don't trust us.
Right.
And rightly so, to a great degree.
Right.
We've proven ourselves untrustworthy.
Right. Yes.
So anyway, I hear your point, and I totally respect and get it. And in fact, one of my measures of mature masculinity is accountability and integrity. Who is living their word? Whose walk is their talk? And we know most of the world does not operate that way, right?
Yeah.
They do not operate that way. So how do we deal with that? Mm-hmm. And I have a chapter in my book, my Turds of Wisdom book, called Nobody is Accountable, and how frustrating that is for me. Mm. But yes. ultimately, and this is getting to the end of the mini essay there, it's on me. Meaning, I have to learn not to expect people to be accountable. I have to learn not to expect them to live in integrity. That's my challenge. And so when they make promises to me and they say they're going to do things for me, I have to just experience it like, okay, I hear that and don't believe it, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Until it's proven, because it's actions, of course, that prove it, not words.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
I
this is,
sorry.
Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, what I have the same reservation about the word brother as Michael has, but I see something now that I didn't see before because of how Frederick was talking about it, and it's similar to, like, to call someone a brother could be a proactive calling forth in someone also, and not so much a reaction. Like, if your experience has been that others have not treated you or have not been a brother, even though they were calling you that, I can understand the reservation around it. But it's very much like Stephen Jenkins was talking about elderhood. One way of growing elderhood is by being an elder, but another way of growing elderhood is by seeing it in the other and calling it forth, even though they have not been that way. You could call someone an elder, and people will be, the right ones will be called forth in that. And so I could see a great, I think Frederick is talking towards a practice of like how far it can take me by calling someone a brother and call that forth in them. And I like that. I never thought of it in this way. And for the first time, I'm thinking, what if I do that? What if I do that? What if I call them a brother and see how much calling forth I can be doing that with that term?
What if?
What if?
Yeah. What if? Yeah.
What if? So let me jump in here just for a moment. Those who may be watching, in about 20 minutes, Simon Smart is going to be joining us, joining the live stream. Very much looking forward to that. And yes, this is part of the Calling All Men Summit. It is free to register. Hans, did you put a link in the comments? This time when you drop the link, let them know what it's for, because some people will be only see it later. So like write something like join the free summit here. Yes. All right. This Calling All Men Facebook page is just going to be full of live streams, live stream videos. That's going to be the whole page. This is very cool. I love that we are gathering men. Yes. So, Frederick, maybe this is time to talk about toxic masculinity. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, let me first add on a comment to what Hans was just saying, which I deeply appreciated. Right. It is true that if we treat people in a certain way, they will, in a sense, enact back that reflection to us of how we see them. Right. So that's true. And there's existential realities. And I've had brothers stab me in the back. No question. Men who I trusted with my life. Well, one in particular. So that also is true about us in a sense that if we're truly going to be samurai, knights of the round table, that existentially we have to remember that every moment, even in the midst of loving brothers, that anything could happen at any moment, right? And we have to be as prepared as we can be and understand that we all have shadow. We all have shadow. And that even a loving brother is going to let me down sometimes and maybe come for me totally unexpectedly. So that's why we have practice of, well, for me, it's Zen, really. is fundamental for that moment to moment awareness and preparation. But we're talking samurai, we're talking martial arts, etc. So anyway, I'll leave off there. If you guys want to respond, fine. Otherwise, I'll go into my rant on toxic masculinity.
Everyone's favorite subject.
Does that mean go ahead?
Are we allowed to use
toxic,
it?
Maybe if masculinity is toxic, it's when it's not very masculine, and it's not showing up with integrity in a brother relationship. That seems kind of toxic to me.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, yeah. So actually, partly because I've written something on this. With your permission, I'm just going to read it. It's not super long, but I really do think it's pernicious and destructive to label up to half the human race with this broad and ill-defined term of toxic masculinity, which is unproductive at best. In fact, it's completely counterproductive. Now, the first question I typically ask when I get into this conversation is, are we also going to employ the term toxic femininity? And I would argue that unless and until we're willing to do that, I think it's unfair to somehow go after men as the only purveyors of toxicity in our culture.
Frederick, how dare you? How dare you? All women are angels, Frederick. How dare you?
We know that, right? We know that. So, I mean, is it just men who are white supremacists and racist? No. Is it just men who are homophobic and stand against the rights of LGBTQ people? No. Is it just men who discriminate against women and are even misogynistic? No. In the last election in the US, 42% of voters for Trump in 2016 were women, almost half the voters. And this for the poster child for sexism, sexual harassment, and abuse. And I would argue, if you want to look at who was most responsible for the failure of the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution, the US Constitution, in the 70s and early 80s, and it failed. This was an amendment that was going to recognize equal stature and rights for women. The person, in my view, who killed it more than any other was Phyllis Schlafly, a woman from Illinois. She was the poster child for the anti-ERA movement. She did more to make sure it didn't pass than any man that I know of. Now, what is all this if not toxic femininity? But my point is not to start encouraging the use of the term toxic femininity. My point is to do away with any term like that, including toxic masculinity. We do equal harm to both sexes by labeling them with a broad brush. Yeah. My point is to stop labeling men and masculinity in this way.
So,
if
Frederick,
go ahead.
If there's also the hashtag believe all women. If we're going to make it equal, why not believe all men?
Yeah. I mean, I understand historically where that's coming from, okay? And
sure.
And we could divert there and talk about that. That's fine. But history, yes, makes up for a large part of present day, but not all of it. So my point is, we don't label groups of people this way, right? We don't make anti-Semitic statements like, well, that's just what Jews do, right? Toxic Jewry, right? We don't make racist statements like, well, black folks are that way, toxic African Americanism. I'm tired of seeing men smeared in this way. I'm proud of my masculinity, and it took me a long, hard road to get here. And we can double back and talk about that if you want, but I don't want to see other men who are turned off who might be on that same journey. In fact, I won't allow it anymore. Any potential misstep they make in speech or action, however innocent at one extreme or however shadowy and dark at the other, is going to be labeled the same, implicating him and all men. Oh, there's the toxic masculine again. Fuck that. So my aim is to enroll men to become co-creators of the egalitarian world I want to bring into being. We only put them off and turn them away by labeling them, potentially reinforcing their move away from progressive possibilities for change to regressive or even repressive ones, joining reactionary groups like the incels. So how do they get there? Stop and think for a minute. Some horny, uncertain 18-year-old boy, what he might be thinking when he makes some typically unrefined or even a boorish comment. And the women around him all say, well, that's him and his toxic masculinity. How do you think he's going to respond after he hears that a few times? Well, anything I seem to do is going to be labeled toxic, so fuck it, I give up. And he's going to start to hate women. And this is
then he becomes toxic.
What's that?
Then he becomes toxic.
And he becomes toxic, exactly. He becomes the thing that these women most fear, in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? Well,
yeah,
one thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, earlier in the last live stream, Hans mentioned Anthony, a kid we met virtually. I think we were in Brazil, Hans, but he was coming onto our Ronin radio broadcast. We were talking to him around that point in time. And, he's kind of a short, young, Asian kid, baby face, doesn't know his way around with the ladies, but he's becoming a man. He wants to kind of trying to find his way. And he's trying to approach girls at the university, and he gets reported and he gets called in front of this kind of tribunal. And the accusation was that he put his hand on a girl's shoulder and it wasn't invited. And the girl didn't talk to him. She didn't say, I'm uncomfortable with that or whatever. I mean, he's just a kid out here making mistakes, trying to learn something new so that he could be good with women one day. And it's kind of this space now where so many boys and young men and men in general are hesitant to be bold, to be outspoken, to be the kind of women that or man that women say they want, and it puts women in a predicament too, because then they're left with guys who are not taking the lead, who are not whatever, because they become so shamed and corrected that they're like watching everything they do and say. It's becoming an unworkable situation.
Well, in my line of work, this makes my blood boil, because that boy is robbed of his opportunity to learn to be a man. He's robbed of the opportunity to make mistakes. It's like telling someone who wants to be a great guitarist, yeah, you could be a great guitarist, but you have to be a great guitarist instantly. You're not allowed to make mistakes. And it's insanity, really. It's amazing that, I mean, without blaming anyone, that boy has to grow up and is robbed the opportunity of learning to become a man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this brings a couple things to mind. One, that was my history. For years, I, in a sense, didn't have that opportunity to learn from my own mistakes about how to deal with women by approaching them. I just didn't do it. I just stepped back and ignored the game altogether. And you should, you've already done the interview, I guess, but you should ask Warren Farrell about this, because he understands how the culture requires men to take the initiative, right? And so we're in this double bind. On one hand, the culture requires us to do this, expects us to do this, and yet if we do it in any way inappropriately, we're the bad guy. We're fucked. So it's a problem. But you, Michael, hit on the key point, I think, and that's shame, right? We've got to recognize that shame, well, we all know this, it's not an effective tool for growth. It is counterproductive. So in effect, we're collectively, societally shaming whole generation of young men, telling them that their desires and their wants are not acceptable.
Well, that they're wrong. It's kind of like their nature is wrong. And this is, this seems on par with racism. It's sexism, basically, right? When it's just like who you are based on your biology is wrong.
Yeah.
Because a certain amount of our behavior is obviously nurture, right? It's obviously nurture. But some amount of it is also the fact that we are hairless apes, so to speak, trying to do our best to be intelligent and civilized and compassionate while we have all these instincts running wild inside of us.
Right. Yeah. So this is not an effective strategy for how we can grow the culture into more understanding and acceptance by massively shaming men. So all I'm asking for with this whole thing is that we recognize that everybody has their shadows, right? Men and women have their shadows. And so men, yes, they're going to sometimes act out and do harmful things. We know this, right? And to women. But that's on that individual man, And so I think that we just need to distinguish between, the crimes of the ideology of patriarchy, if you want to use that term, and the crimes of individual men. So just like with women, let's judge them as individuals, not as a group. And if we can do that, then maybe we can start to engage individual men again who might otherwise be lost forever on the other side of that toxic label called toxic masculinity.
Yes, amen. Frederick, I have a kind of revulsion to the word patriarchy because
I get it.
I grew up in a home where patriarch was a loving, responsible, guiding, compassionate, connected to source, accountable man and his family, only a positive sense. Every Mormon kid gets a patriarchal blessing. We always got father's blessings before we started the school year. He would lay his hands on our head, and so to me, a patriarch is something beautiful that a man can grow up and become. It's a role of honor. It's a role of great responsibility, and it's something that he's honored for. And yeah, I can imagine boys growing up today. It's like, okay, don't be toxic. Don't become a patriarch. Dads are not necessary. You can become a man. Well, let's not get into that. But yeah, it's the world is changing very fast. And it's very confusing, I think, for a lot of men, especially younger men and boys. It's what does it even mean to be a man today?
Well, and I use that term very advisedly, very advisedly. And to me, you're right. I mean, I think the original meaning of the term, in a sense, exists no longer. And it's really about an ideology, and an ideology that is about control and domination, which, historically in the world Sure, men have been more guilty of that than women, but it's an ideology that also infects women. Like this woman, Phyllis Schlafly, who I just spoke about. She was all about, no, women stay in the home and they're in the kitchen. And, we don't need equal rights because then we will not be honored anymore as wives and sisters and daughters, etc.
Yes. So, all right. Mr. Simon Smart should be joining us momentarily. I've sent him new links because the old link is no good. So I do expect to see him shortly here.
Well, I'm happy to stay on as filler if you need me. But if you don't, I'm happy to sign off.
You could do your best Simon Smart impression, Frederick. He's also a bearded bald guy. So. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry. I think he has a mohawk. Yeah, he has a kind of a short mohawk these days.
Cool.
He's not allowed if he's not a bearded bald guy on this call.
Well, and I don't, for what it's worth, call myself a bald guy. I actually shave my head.
Yeah, so do I.
So I have a little bit of hair there, but you won't see it because I shave it off.
Okay, half bald, half shaved. How's that? Hans is fully bald.
No, I thought bald was the term for someone who shaves it. Otherwise, you're balding. That's what I was
Hairless
thinking.
by choice.
Yes.
All right.
And look who the cat dragged in.
Just me.
Mr. Simon Smart, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks for that new link. Glad to find it. Good morning,
Yeah.
gentlemen. Good afternoon, wherever you are.
Howdy.
Simon,
Well,
wonderful to meet you. I'm going to sign off. I was kind of filler holding the stage until you showed up.
Well, normally I'd say I hope it wasn't something I said, but I literally haven't said anything, so it must be my looks or general attitude.
Frederick, thank you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Thank you, Frederick.
See you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Blessings to y'all.
Simon, as we're getting set up to introduce you here, if you look up in the right corner of your screen, if you want to broadcast to any channels you have, Facebook page, Facebook profile, YouTube, Twitter, you're more than welcome to do so. It's pretty simple to do, but it might take a minute or two if you're not used to this platform.
Yeah, let me just do that. I just click stream to the audience and then log in, right? Or sign up free. Sign up free.
Something like that. You don't need to join StreamYard, but it'll walk you through a little process there.
Let me play around with that. How are you, sir? Doing well?
Yeah, doing well. I'm going to give folks who are joining us a little bit of a preview of the summit here. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Going to share my screen in just a moment. Let's see. Yeah, we're up and running. I'm getting a crash course in live streaming, multi-streaming, social media marketing, all at once.
Crash courses are the best ones, man.
Yes.
Well, give me a second here and I'll get this all set up.
All right. Hey, Hans, when you leave the stream, click on your image below the video and remove yourself. Remove yourself from the stage. Otherwise, it's just and you're muted, by the way.
Otherwise, it's a black screen. Got it.
Yeah. All right. So welcome everyone who's joining us. This is Michael Sky. We are live streaming as part of the Calling All Men Summit. Thank you for joining us. And over at callingallmensummit.com, you can join this entire summit for free all week long. We've interviewed 50 great men. And in just a moment, we are going to be talking live to Simon Smart. Hans Komain is going to join us. This website you see to the right of me, this is where you log in, get your free pass to Calling All Men. Hans is posting a link to join the summit in the comments. And yeah, and that's how you can get those 50 interviews during the week. Now, if you want to participate in the live portion of the summit, what you want to do is go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Calling All Men Summit. Facebook.com/Calling All Men Summit. We're going to talk to mostly new men who are not on the website as part of the summit on the website. We're going to be talking live to elders. We're going to be talking to founders of the men's movement, men's organizations. We're going to be talking to some younger folks. We're going to be talking to men who've been doing men's work in men's circles around the world and in Europe. So yeah, we're going to have a fun conversation. And our next guest, let's go ahead and bring him onto the screen, Hans. Let's see. You got that, co-host? There we go. Awesome. All right. Yes. So I want to queue up his bio here, but before I read this man's bio, I'll just, I met him not too long ago. I think it's been less than a year, but you meet this man in person and he just gives you the sense that he's very sincere. He's a man of his word. He cares. He deeply cares about men. And he's real. So I've seen him, on Facebook is mostly how we've interacted over the past several months. But he's reaching out to men, meeting men where they are, in the face of crisis. And many of us are in one crisis or another, or many at the same time. So, yes, with 25 years practicing martial arts, meditation, traditional initiation, and warriorship, Simon has made turning good men into great men his life purpose. Originally from Scotland, he came to the U.S. as a subject matter expert for the DoD. Really, I'm not sure I knew that, Department of Defense, training personnel prior to deployments, and has lived in the desert Southwest for 15 years. I'm very jealous. I've been in the city here in Nairobi for the last 11 months, and my girlfriend, her parents are from a village in the desert an hour from the coast, and I just can't wait to go back. He also has extensive experience in marketing, sales, and business growth. After battling his own demons, he now trains men to live in power with massive vision and maximum masculinity so that they can make more money, have better sex, and be phenomenal fathers. Simon Smart, welcome.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on, my friend. I know you've got a long day, and I'm glad I'm here to bring some energy to get you through the long march. Great to be here.
It's been a long 6 months putting this thing together.
You've done a lot of work, my friend. You're helping a lot of guys, so I really respect that.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Simon is also featured as one of the 50 men we interviewed at callingallmensummit.com. His interview is going live on Wednesday. We talked, Simon, a lot about your story. Quite a fascinating story. A lot of themes of adventure and warriorship and initiation, and then Simon has also generously and I would say meticulously created a guide, a video instructional tutorial on how to, if you are a young man or a man who is not initiated, has not been through a rite of passage, and you long for that, and maybe you ask yourself, am I a man yet, or you long to really have that confidence as a man, and maybe you have no men or no initiated men in your world, or no way to find yourself with initiation, let's say. Simon created like a simple, very straightforward how-to video training on how to go about setting up, creating your own rite of passage. And it's a beautiful guide, and that is for those who choose to own the Summit package. There's a lot of video trainings in there, and Simon's is one of them. And if you stay with us on this live stream at the end of the hour, Simon is going to go live with us into a group Zoom training. You can interact with us, ask us questions. And what is the topic we're going to be talking about in that training, Simon?
Michael, what I feel like sharing today is something that's been a practice for me for a long time. We could label it meditation. We could label it masculine energetics. But just to put a bit of flavor onto this, I believe that men in the West have been largely underserved for many years by the concept of meditation. See, meditation arrived in the 50s, 60s, 70s, really through the hippie movement. And so it was presented as a way to chill out, man, de-stress, just have some love. And then the medical establishment has taken meditation and turned it into a method of dealing with stress. Meditation has an ancient history. Most meditation practices come from warrior cultures. So the Buddhist tradition comes from Gautama Buddha, who was a member of the Kshatriya class in ancient India, which was the warrior class. That's where he learned a lot of his meditation. Likewise, in Japan, things like Zen became incredibly important practices for the samurai, not because they wanted to chill out, not because they wanted to deal with their stress. They discovered that good meditation made them dangerous motherfuckers on the battlefield. It increased their survival rate, it increased their effectiveness, and had a lot of other ancillary benefits. So we've cut the line to warriorship in most Western meditation. What I'm going to do today is show some of the men on the stream how to use meditation as an adjunct to masculinity practice, how to get deep into your body and out of your head, how easy it is to control your emotions using a little bit of intent and breath work. And so that's what I want to share today. I think it'll be a really good class for the people who attend.
Great. And that's in the training for the members. If you choose to purchase the Summit and the full library of interviews, a lot of great trainings from a lot of great mentors coming up. Simon, this is my good friend, Hans Komain. Have you met Hans?
This is the first time, Hans, but great to meet you, man. I assume you're the sanity behind Michael.
I don't know about that. But,
yes. Good meeting you, Simon.
If you're a man joining us right now, if you're in the comments, if you're seeing us on, perhaps you're seeing us on Simon's Facebook page or my Twitter or Hans's page, if you come to facebook.com/Calling All Men Summit, when you post a comment, we can see who you are. We can see your little icon image of who you are, what your name is, and we can have an interaction with you. So we invite you to do that. Also, tag a brother, tag a man in your life. You know, who's a man who would love to hear other men talk about, warriorship and meditation as coming from warrior culture and brotherhood, fatherhood, elderhood, manhood. Tag that man in the comments, invite him to the conversation.
That alone is a great insight, Simon, that meditation comes from warriorship. I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, I didn't get into meditation years ago because I wanted to be full of love and all those things. Although that's changed as I've developed my practice. Now I am focused more on that. I'm focused more on vitality, longevity, these things. When I was a young man in my early 20s, teens, in fact, I was a martial artist. I was fighting every weekend. I was working doors around town.
Now that you say that, I'm looking at you and you look like Chuck Liddell. Have you ever heard that?
I've never been told that before, but I'll take that as a compliment. So yeah, I was getting into meditation because I wanted to be faster reactions, more endurance, better control of my body. And I think that's the entry point for a lot of martial arts guys into meditation. But then as I went to live in Asia and trained with some much older men than myself, I learned there was a lot more to it. And yeah, what I've been working on for a few years now is how can I take these old traditions from Zen, from Mikyo Buddhism, from Tian Dao, Heavenly Way, Qigong, things like this. How can we take the esoteric and the mystical and the religiousness out of it? And how can we turn that into a practice that a man can spend 20 minutes every morning on and really deeply connect with himself as he is today, but also connect with the aspects of himself that perhaps he's pushed into his shadow side that would serve him if he was able to properly marry himself to those aspects. So there's a lot to be gained for a man with a well-structured meditation practice, in my opinion.
I love that. That's essentially what we did with yoga in the West, is we removed the religion, and still the practice of yoga is very beneficial. There's a lot of religious people now who practice yoga. That wasn't true in the beginning. It was kind of seen as the occult. But now you can find all kinds of Christians, at least, practicing yoga.
Simon, I think meditation is a great thing for Christians to practice as well. I've worked with a number of them. What I find is that when people go to God to pray, a lot of times they're not in a good state. They've just come out of a chaotic day and they want to go meet God in a less than positive way. I guess it's my personal opinion that if you are going to go meet the divine, you should do it in a way where you maybe prep yourself for 5 minutes, get yourself in a good place first. People will warm up to play tennis, but they won't warm up for prayer. And so actually what we'll do in our class today is I'll show a really simple warm up for meditation. It's valuable because a lot of guys, they try to meditate. They're told good meditation is not thinking. And so they'll sit there for 10, 20, 30 minutes trying not to think about thinking. And then they'll quit because that was impossible in the first place. They never had a chance. So the way that I start meditation is with a warm-up that just calms the body down, slows the body down, gets us connected to ourselves. It's a great warm-up for prayer as well, to control your nervous system, get calm, get incredibly clear on what the prayer is that you would like to be answered before delivering the request.
I'll say this, me and my woman, we pray together, and it's been a great practice. And I remember saying her, like, let's pray, and she was like, no, we gotta move into it. We gotta prepare, get ready for the praying, I thought It was beautiful. So I get it.
That's very wise. And I love that you pray with your woman, man. When I break it down, when I break down manhood, I often break it into 4 areas. We've all heard of the king, warrior, magician, lover, right? I think those are great archetypes, but sometimes I find them a little less than practical for guys to work with. So sometimes I'll break it down into the 4 areas of manhood being the provider and the protector, followed by the patriarch, which for anyone getting offended just means a masculine leader. And finally, the priest. So we as men, I think, should be the spiritual leaders of our homes. And so leading our family in prayer or leading our family in whatever that looks like for you, I think that's a really great practice of masculine leadership. Love it.
Patriarchal prayer. Nice.
.com. Go get it.
Yes, provider, protector, patriarch, priest.
Priest.
As I've done these interviews, some other archetypes have kind of come to the forefront: brother, father, elder. Yeah, I'm missing some here, but the calling to take on a sacred role of honor and responsibility in relation to one's people, which you definitely, warrior can be that, being a warrior for your people, king, magician, lover, but these are all kind of self-oriented, it seems, or at least that's how I think a lot of men relate to them is, yeah, I'm going to develop myself more into this. And what are missing is like a sacredness, like let's bring the sacredness back to being a brother, like a warrior brother, like a real brother, someone who has your back no matter what.
Yes, I love that distinction, internal versus external and outflowing. I know we talked about this on our interview, Michael, but for me, one of the things that changed when I went through my manhood quest and I put the boy aside, per Corinthians, put away childish things. I realized that life was a lot less about me and my desires and a lot more about me and my duties, right? Desire is an internal, what do I want? Duty is, okay, who am I in relation to other people in my circle? Who am I in relation to the world? When you get past manhood into warriorship, now it's, what is my relationship to the universe? It gets even bigger. But yeah, those archetypes, the classic ones of the men's coaching spaces, the king, warrior, magician, and lover, those are inward facing, right? Those are getting in touch with our inward archetypes. And there's a ton of value in that because we go inside and we learn better who we are. It allows us to pull out some of these character traits, these energies. But then the next step is the most important. It's, how do I share these? How do I flow these archetypes that were inside of me out into the world in a purposeful and useful way? And I think that's why I flipped it into protector, provider, patriarch, and priest, because those values only exist in relationship to others, right? Protector, who am I protecting? Provider, who am I providing for? Patriarch, who am I leading? Priest, who's inside of my spiritual space?
Yeah, you could add for my people onto the end of every one of those, provider for my people, protector of my people, patriarch of my people, priest of my people, or not just of, right, but they're all also for, right, for our people, right?
There's an old Nadi story I heard a long time ago. The Nadi are the people of the Southwest desert here, often known as the Apache. It's not what they call themselves. That means the enemy. That's what others call them. Nadi means the people. That's what they call themselves. So there's
what language is Apache, the term, the name?
I believe it's from probably Lakota. But yeah, that's what they're often known as. That's what they often call themselves. But the original name was Nadi. So there's a man. It's wintertime. He's out hunting, makes a kill, harvests a bunch of meat, takes the long journey back to his village, enters the village, and there's an old lady. Her husband's passed away, and she's trying to survive the winter. So he hacks off a big chunk of meat, gives it to her so she can be taken care of. Walks a little further through the village. There's a family whose husband was killed in the war last year. 3 kids, an old lady, and a mother, also in need of food. So he hacks off most of the meat he has left and gives it to them. By the time he gets back to his house in the center of the village, he has no meat. So he shrugs his shoulders, keeps walking, and just leaves the other side of the village to go hunt the other side of the valley. I love that story, right? The energy, the sentiment of, okay, I went hunting, I was successful, but on the way to getting from there to me being able to eat, there were a bunch of people who needed it more than me. So give it away. And then we do what we do as men, right? Get back to work.
Yeah, and you look at who is that man? What is his identity? And I think that we can say you can't really, his identity is not just self-created. Oh, I'm this, whatever title I put on my Facebook page. No, he is the one who is providing for his people. He's like, his life is about his service and his duty and his, and there's a lot of meaning in that and connection in that and honor in that. And is what so many of us men are lacking today. It's not just that we're isolated and cut off from father, brothers, community. All these other things come along with it. I mean, purpose. Usually, usually if you have a people, you have a purpose. Because your people are your purpose in a way. I mean, that's what duty is, really.
I agree with that. There's no purpose, no duty. Honor is impossible without other people. And what I love about that story is, this guy's a hunter. I'm sure he knows how to sneak through a village without being seen. So
Right.
He gets to keep his meat. I'm sure he has the power to say, no, this is for me, get your own. But he doesn't. And so in that, what I feel is a sense of abundance, right? There's a sense of, I can let everything I've just earned go because I'll just go get more. And so I think that's also a part of this provider mindset is, I got more energy. I got more wealth. I'll give people what they need and I'll just go get more for myself. And then there's the trust element, right? The trust that if I give, I'll be provided for somehow as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And what if we brought that more into our day-to-day, even into our business world? That sneaking through the village and like, I got mine, go get yours. That's probably the way most of us do business, but it's actually, it can be a lot easier to survive even as a business with an abundant kind of, I'm taking care of all of us, and even including in that your competitors, I mean, in this space where there's like men's coaches, there's men's work, I mean, first of all, it's natural to be in scarcity because it's like I'm in fear for my own survival, right? But I've actually experienced this at times when when I was out traveling. Well, I guess I'm in Kenya, but like when I was more backpacking, let's say, just skipping around all the time, I actually had a practice of not working, not selling, not marketing, not earning money, not networking, not controlling my future. I was living through gifting and receiving. And there'd be times when I would run out of everything. I would have no money. And what I learned was when that fear of survival came up, like, where am I going to get my next meal? The secret I learned to deal with that survival threat was start giving, start being of service. And I could try to explain like why that just helped me feel at peace and at ease. But it was like, I'm taking care of people. Of course, if I get in a tough place, they're going to be there for me too. I think it had something to do with that. And so I'm just kind of what ifing, what if we as men who are, I mean, Simon, you are in a lot of ways bringing back these roles of duty and honor for men, right? What if we bring back even into our business world of doing men's work an abundance of brotherhood and the gifts that men can give each other, including mentorship and,
Well, I mean, I see you doing that with this summit, Michael. There's a lot of people who you've invited to be in this circle who we could say are competitors. But, when you come back to abundance and you realize there are billions of guys who need help. And, the person who might want to work with one of the other gentlemen on this summit might hear me speak, look at me and think, oh, screw this guy. The same words magically from a different man can connect deeply into that person. So what I'm excited to see, I got into what we now call the men's workspace in 2001. There was a little bit going on, but this crisis of boyhood that we're speaking about, we were talking about it then. We were talking about how initiation had been replaced by gang initiations and drugs and porn and video games, all these things. So the crisis hasn't gone away. What the win for me is that we have a more emergent man's movement, which is, of course, the answer to some of these problems. It still doesn't get anywhere near enough bandwidth. And what I'd love to see is a raising of the quality of men doing work in this space. There is no barrier to entry. And so there's a lot of really good-hearted guys who are coming in trying to help. And I welcome them because we need as many as we can get. But at the same time, those of us who've been in the space a while, I think we have a duty to raise up everyone, and make sure that the work that's being delivered to men at large is really high quality. I'm sure we're all aware that there's a lot of messaging going out to men about masculinity now, which is not that positive. There's a lot of ideas being put out which sound great, but are maybe a little misguiding around wealth and money and how to make it, and how you're not a man unless you got a Lambo and a couple of bitches on your arm. That may be the path for some people, but for most men, there's a far deeper, more elegant way to live, in my opinion. And I'd love to see that shared a lot more.
Hans, what are you hearing?
Well, I was just thinking, as we talk about, you can hear me, right? And we talk about brotherhood. That is the attitude, or brotherhood is the proven epitome of looking at it in an abundant way. It's only if you have the abundant mindset that brotherhood becomes possible, in this space. And so brotherhood itself, for me, is a sign of that abundant spirit coming together, And so, to me, the coming together and the brotherhood itself can be the goal, and is maybe the primary goal. Like Simon was saying too, where like there's a bigger movement, and that's in itself already a big part of the solution. The just coming together of men, and that's what I was reflecting on, thinking as you were talking about this.
I agree, Hans. I got a voicemail about, I think it was last night I got it. It's from a buddy of mine. I haven't seen him in probably 6 months. We've just both been busy moving in different circles. He lives in town with me here in Tucson. It was a quick message. He said, the Wash, that's the river coming down from the mountains. We got some snow up on the mountains last week, so that water is now percolating down to the level we're at here. Basically said the Wash is going to have a ton of cold water in it in the next few weeks. Let me know if you want to meet at 6 a.m. and we'll get out there and do some ritual purification in the snow melt. That was the whole message. And I'll message him back and I'll say, hey, how's this day? And it'll be dark. We'll both show up. We know exactly where to meet because we've done it before. We'll run 2 or 3 miles in the dark. We'll jump in the snow melt water for 20, 30 minutes, hang out, and then run back, and that'll be that. But most guys don't have those kinds of invitations, right? And that I know that will be a very powerful way to reconnect with my brother. And it'll be a great experience for me of prayer and immersion and just connecting with my power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got the ice, but you got the brother also. I think that's, I said it with Frederick in the previous one. I just spent a month with 2 of my allies, here in the mountains above Medellin in Colombia. And we called it Growth House or Intentional Community. And we're just together for a month, And that in itself was so powerful, so made me so productive and was very healing just to have him around,
Yes. Yeah. And
Simon,
of course,
I wonder if you
go ahead.
I wonder if you tell us more about these 4 archetypes that we started talking about: provider, protector, patriarch, and priest, what are each of them like as an invitation to a man or like a calling? Like I don't know, what's inspiring for him to take on these different roles? How do you see that?
Good. The reason I break them down is because I talk to men, I meet men who usually are pretty good at one or two of them. And a lot of times when there's a part of our life that we have a blind spot in, we don't really know that it exists, especially in modern culture. So the most simple one that most guys will get is providership, right? Providership is an invitation to be the one who makes sure the family or your partner, whoever it is who's inside of your circle, has the things necessary to be safe and to have an expansive life themselves. So, of course, that starts with things like shelter, being able to go to good schools, being able to have nutritious food. All these things come under providership, right? When you don't provide well for your family, other opportunities that might be present for your family can be missing. So we want to give our people the most rich life experience possible. At the same time, so many kids grow up in a lot of poverty, which we know adds a lot of stress to both the child and to the mother-father relationship. If we can find ways to become expert at our craft, to provide excellence in whatever it is we're called to as a vocation, the beautiful thing about the world is it most often rewards us with a little bit more abundance and affluence. So, of course, that has to be a focus for men. Without that, it's hard to build the foundation for everything else. Protectorship is the next level. Women want to feel safe. Children need to be safe. No harm should ever come to the women or the children. That's an old credo. And so as men, there's got to be inside of us a knowledge that we are willing to fight physically to protect the people we care about. I find a lot of men have never been in any kind of physical conflict. I love hanging out and working with my guys who are combat vets. Not everyone's had that experience. There are great men walking around today, very successful in so many areas of life. They've never been punched in the face. They've never dropped a guy. And so as they walk down the street with their woman, sometimes there's a little voice in the back of their head that says, I want to protect her, but if the crunch arrives, can I protect her? And I just don't know because I've never done it before. And we've never done something before. We always have a little insecurity around it, right? So at a basic level, men should put themselves into positions with other men where, get whacked around a little bit in a healthy, loving, brotherly way. I think you saw my stories from yesterday over the weekend, Michael. I have a guy who was doing a belt test and he got to go a few rounds with me, just giving him some pressure, some physical culture, I guess, is what he was getting to experience. So
yeah, Hans was deprived of having a big brother, so he didn't get whacked around very much in his life. He was kind of the only boy in the family, kind of like, probably babied a bit much. So as I've come into his life, I've done the good elder brotherly thing and given him his good share of whacks. At first he thought it was bullying, but I said, no, man, it's love. This is big brother love.
Do you want to talk about bullying?
Sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, right? We've removed bullying largely from our culture and from schools, but we've also seen boys become very soft at the same time. And this is where I start to walk on thin ice because it's easy for people to think that I'm going to advocate for bullying. There is a way that we men approach each other, especially when we're new to each other. And a lot of times we'll test the frame of the other guy. We want to know how strong, how resilient he is. Sometimes that can just be verbal sparring, verbal jibes at each other, right? We'll make little jokes about each other. Part of that is designed to see, okay, does he get butthurt or does he laugh and send it right back? We know at a very deep biological level that a man who can laugh and send it right back is someone we can rely on more readily than a man who gets butthurt and upset about it. So we're always testing each other. I remember I was in the gym years ago, and I had this realization. There was a big guy, probably a foot taller than me, big, heavy lifter guy. And we used to spar with each other when we were lifting, and just call each other out for being pussies. And I walked in the gym, right, and he came out of the corner and he just hit me hard in the shoulder. And I hit him right back. But it struck me that that was a test, right? He didn't know it was a test, but it's one of these unconscious tests we give each other. It was like, can I hit this guy? Does he fall over and crumple on the ground, or is he solid? And so we're always looking for this solidarity in other men. Bullying, unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it, sort of provides the foundation for that ability to take a bit of jip and give it right back. And when you completely deprive boys, especially, of any environment of bullying, it's hard for them to develop that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that perhaps an important component is having someone there who is the loving, let's say, fatherly figure, older brother. Because if you're in a cold environment where everyone just occurs like an enemy, and you're just being bullied, right? Excluded, put down, humiliated, right? That's kind of different than, my dad, we talk shit between each other all the time. And I grew up taking it from him. He would always tell me, oh, they sure don't make boys like they used to. Basically saying that in his day, he's a man. They don't make him like him anymore. And my stepmother would always chastise him when he would do that around me. And she couldn't believe he would be so mean to his son. I was like, Pat, this is love. We would go out and play full court basketball for hours on end into the night, not willing to let the other one walk away with the upper hands, But it was bonding between my dad and I. And it seems to me like when I look around today, so much is misconstrued as bullying. That's really just kind of a normal male connection. And there's a lot of guys who I think grow up in the Western world that if they went to the non-Western world, wouldn't know how to fit in with other men. Or if they went onto a construction site and got a blue collar job, they would break down in tears from not just knowing how to deal with the shit that you're going to be given in a lot of all male situations.
What I hear from Simon is whatever you could judge bullying as bad or good, but what I hear is it plays an essential role in building up that strength of a boy, of a man. It could be an essential part of becoming a man. Could be, in that sense, being bullied.
I was little when I was a kid, and I was the youngest in my year group, and I had a different accent, so I got bullied a lot. It wasn't fun at the time, but I'm tremendously glad it happened. It gave me a really strong foundation in myself and not really caring what people said about me. So I think we do deprive our boys sometimes when we completely remove it from the environment. And of course, Michael really hit on something, with the different response, your mother versus your father. Women tend to perceive verbal jabs as just being mean. Women have a different sexual strategy than men. Men have, or a social strategy for men is what's called compete and collaborate, right? So if you throw a bunch of guys on an island in a situation together, the first thing they would do is test each other physically, verbally, see who's strong, see who's weak. And then from that, a hierarchy would begin to emerge. The hierarchy would become the framework for the new tribe. And based on that hierarchy is how we would operate, how we would survive, how we would hunt, etc. Women tend to have an ancient compete and exclude strategy because, as a female mammal, as soon as there are other women in the tribe or other females in the tribe, mating chances are reduced with the alpha. So women often can be really mean to each other as a way to push the other out of the group. Men are mean to each other to toughen each other up and find hierarchy and tribe. So it's an important distinction, I think, to understand.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And of course, when we live in a feminized society, we get chastised for any action which is uniquely male. Which is why we need men-only spaces where we can go back to our roots and our innate understanding of how masculine dynamics actually are, and bring that to each other.
Yeah, it's one of the things that strikes me is I see a lot of men trying to create men-only spaces. I mean, in a way, this Calling All Men Summit is an attempt to do this, but of course, we're broadcasting to the world right now. I mean, anyone can join and watch. And a lot of these conversations that happen on YouTube, and that, conversations that I think a lot of women or feminists might label as toxic, is just men getting together and trying to make sense of the world around them, trying to toughen each other up, trying to give them advice for going forward. And yeah, to a lot of people, that's going to sound toxic as fuck. But those interactions with men, especially young men growing up, I mean, if you get me and my two brothers together, we're around the campfire or whatever, it's a competition for who can say the most offensive, nasty things that the other two might just bow out like, okay, I give up, and it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of like a release from all of the pressures of civilization that are like, don't say this, don't think that, don't say that out loud. I experience such just a release when I get around men like that. And I don't know, it's interesting. I imagine there's some men that I've interviewed that would probably really disagree with this, who would want to like call men out in some of these men only spaces. But I think there's what's appropriate way of being is different based on where you're at.
I agree. I think it's important, all these things have subtlety to them, and they have a time and a place where they're appropriate, and a time and a place where they're less appropriate. That laughter that we get from dark humor, the archetype of the comedian is like the jester in the medieval court. He's the only man in court who can say anything without getting his head cut off. And that's what makes comedy funny. Comedy is funny because the comedian says what no one else is allowed to say, but it's like a release valve on society, because these things are true. We just don't talk about them very much, so we can laugh and let it out. That's a mark of a healthy society. Another thing we see in modern society is comedians being sued and chased out of institutions, and great comedians retiring because everyone gets offended, and that causes them legal problems. So we've actually created a society where there is no release valve for humor and truth.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that we're trying to make all of humanity, now that we're all connected through social media and online, we're trying to we're fighting over what should be the rules for our behavior all of the time with everyone else. And we've just, we not only there are few male spaces anymore, there's kind of few spaces where just people get together in person anymore. Like everything's happening online. And I think this is part of the blow up in the culture war and the fighting is, it's like, how dare this guy have a channel that just seems like a locker room talk, Well, before the internet, the guys would have the talk in the locker room and no one would even think twice about it. And they would get their release, and then they can go back to being civilized men in everyday society. So I think a lot of our challenges today are brought about by the technology as well.
I think the technology creates an environment where everyone thinks they're a part of my tribe, Michael. And I think everyone else is a part of my tribe too. You see, you're taking tens of thousands of tribes and meshing them all together on the internet, and then we're surprised when there are different rules and different ways of being. I think a lot of being offended could be removed if, number one, when I say something that's appropriate in my circle and it's taken to a different tribe completely out of context, well, of course they're going to be offended.
Yeah.
That's not their way.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means I wouldn't fit in your tribe and you wouldn't fit in my tribe. That's fine too.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm here in Kenya, and when the British left, they drew these artificial boundaries through tribal territories and made it a democracy, basically giving control to one tribe that had, by the way the lines were drawn, has the majority of the people, and it's just led to endless strife and nasty violence. Whereas, if the tribes are left to themselves, they can each do their own thing, do their own way, laugh at the other tribes. But the other tribes are not there when they're laughing at the other tribes. They're just by themselves laughing at the outsiders. And that's what humans do.
Yes. And of course, when one tribe goes to meet another tribe historically, what do they send? They send a diplomat, right? Someone who can find a way to bridge the cultures. What we have on the internet is tens of thousands of tribes colliding with each other with no diplomacy, no diplomats. So of course it's warfare.
It's very interesting. So Simon, let's gear up for the training that you're going to take us through. For people who joined us just recently or maybe watching the video, why don't you tell us one more time, what are you going to take us through in this? We're going to gather together on Zoom on a video for those who own the summit package. So everyone can participate in the full summit for free. Go to callingallmensummit.com. It's all free all week long. But if you purchase, you're going to get a bunch of extra video trainings and live trainings from different mentors, including our live mentors here this week. And Simon is one of them. He's already recorded a very powerful training in how to build and create and go through your own rite of passage if you have no other way to do it. And what's the training that you're going to gift us with in a few minutes here, Simon?
Michael, I think that men are disconnected in a whole host of ways. Disconnected from other men, disconnected from kids, disconnected from their women, disconnected from their power, their purpose, disconnected from spirit. And so there's a lot of disconnections, right? And then the question becomes, well, which one should I reconnect with first? I find most modern men are stuck in their head. So what we're going to do in a few minutes here is I'm going to run through a training, an experience around meditation, breathing, energetics, and emotional intensity that's going to teach the men how to get out of your head and connect deeply into your body and your energy in a way that begins to give you back control over who you are, what kind of energy you bring to any situation. And more than anything else, the realization that just with a little bit of focused concentration, you can very quickly change how you feel inside of yourself.
Mm.
Would this be helpful, Simon? For like 2 weeks ago, I was a bit stressed and I caught myself. Well, I saw myself react, being stressed, and I didn't like it at all to see it,
Where did you feel? Where was the stress in your body?
Well, it's only in hindsight. Well, I don't know if I'm answering it, but it's only in hindsight I saw that I was just it looked like I had too much on my plate and I reacted it out.
Yes.
I was just, and then afterwards I'm looking at it and it's just why, and then I felt a lot of shame around it. And so what I'm wondering, what I'm going to look for as you do this is, can this meditation help me to catch myself earlier so I don't continue in my chain of reaction?
Such an important thing, right? Catching yourself 2 months into deep depression is a little late. You got some digging to do at that point. If we can catch ourselves an hour into it, we haven't embedded ourselves into that feeling yet. If we can catch ourselves as it's happening, even better. And, for maximum points, can we catch ourselves a couple of days before it even shows up? Because we start to understand, something's running differently in my body. That is not how I want it to be. When I go into the Chinese medicine model, two places where men hold a lot of tension is the yin wei meridians that run down the front of the body, and the corresponding yang wei meridians that run down the back. Yang wei has a lot to do with how we accept and receive the chaos and tension of noise of the world, right? So when we're in business, we're at our computers, we're stressed out, we start to feel our shoulders rising up, right? Like this, and our shoulders reach our ears, and that back and shoulder tension can be seen as an overload of the yang wei vessels. So I'll show you some ways to drop energy and cleanse out those channels. And then on the front of our body, we have these yin wei vessels, which are to do with emotional trauma and tension. So we'll also touch on some ways to clean out the yin wei meridian to let go of some of this stuck emotional energy that so many of we men really hold in our solar plexus and in our gut. We'll flush that out, and I'll show you some easy stuff you can use anytime. It may not stop you having these problems, but will it be a tool that can help you to slough that feeling off faster? Absolutely.
That's great.
Thinking about flushing out, I need to use the restroom. And so we're going to take a restroom break before we meet for our live training with Simon. If you have purchased a summit, you are welcome to join us live.
Michael, can you?
Our Facebook group.
Okay.
Yes, I will send the Zoom link to both Hans and Simon.
Cool.
And let's begin
People,
that.
Michael.
On the hour. Yes, Hans.
Oh, on the hour. The people that have purchased, where will they see this?
So if you purchase the summit and you go to the page to get what you've purchased, there'll be a link to the Facebook group there. Inside of the Facebook group is a link to the Zoom call.
Great.
Cool.
All right.
We're gonna go for about an hour there, right, Michael? Is that correct?
It's up to you, Simon.
Well, I can do 5 minutes. I can do 45, an hour. You just tell me. Cool. Well, I'm going to run, and I'm going to jump on a different device in a different room, and I'll meet you guys on the Zoom.
Excellent. See you there.
Cool. Peace.
And you guys can go, but I just want to give a preview of tomorrow for everyone. So at 9 a.m. Eastern, we'll be talking with Paul Lloyd Robson. At about 11:30 Eastern, Hans and I will be on for a bit of a preview show. At noon, Frederick will be back with us. 1:30, we're with George Bruno, the Sultan of Silver. And at 4 p.m. Eastern, we will be with Francisco Fortunio.
Yay.
We'll see everyone tomorrow.